Hey, I'm Coach Micheal, Burt, the Super Coach. Just text Coach Burt to this number or that number to get weekly updates, where I'm going to be coaching, and strategies for you to play at a much higher frequency. All right, this month, the Monster Producer, here is the concept. How do you build a great team? How do you build a great team? Go back to a time in your life when you were on a great team. And think about that. How many bad teams have you been on in your life? Quite a bit. All right, now let me ask you a question. Why are there more bad teams than good teams?
Not on the same page.
Okay, not on the same page.
People won't buy in.
People won't buy in.
Right.
Resistance
Yep.
to each other, to the leader, selfishness.
Yep.
Right? Now, I want to tie all of this in because I was working on the Flip the Switch boot camp content. Because these are really, for the most part, young 20 to 30 year olds. And I was listening, of course, I listen to all this stuff on the weekends. And I was listening to Robert Greene on human nature. And he's talking about most people are strangers to their own self. Meaning they don't really know who they are. They don't really know what they believe. They don't really have any awareness of where they're weak. They don't really know themselves, right? And if you don't have an awareness of yourself, you don't have an awareness of how your behavior affects other people. Does that make sense? Now, we have a newborn, as you know, and this little guy, he sleeps, eats, and poops. That's all he does, okay? And cries. But he's so good during the day. Like he just hangs out. Just all day long, he just hangs out. He just sits there and anything. And he really don't do anything. And then at night, he stays up, right? And every 3 hours, Natalie has to get up and feed him. So all throughout the night, every 3 hours, see what I'm saying? 9:30, 12:30, 3:30, 6:30. Follow what I'm saying?
Yep, I did that for 18 months.
And old Coach Burt does something like this.
It was every 2 hours for me.
Do you get up too?
I get up and just like last night he's crying, so I get up and try to hold him and I mean, he's just, you don't know.
Just the pass off is so helpful.
Yeah, you don't know why he's upset. You don't know why he's crying. You don't know, you know what I'm saying? He just cries and cries and cries, and then he eats and then he goes to sleep. And that's what he does. So there's a book out there called Baby Wise. And Baby Wise teaches you how to train him on a schedule. So you feed him every 3 hours, then you keep him up for 30 minutes, then right, and then eventually you add 30 minutes to it till within a couple of months he'll sleep all night. You train him, okay?
Didn't work.
Now it didn't work with yours. That worked with Ella Grace. But this guy comes out with a theory and a formula and says, look, here's the formula. Okay, so keep him on this schedule, right? Do this, and they coach him. Well, I think when you're thinking about being on a team, what happens is all day long, everybody's actions are affecting other people. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Either directly or indirectly. Mm-hmm. Then when you get deeper into this, and the reason I'm telling you this is because when I'm looking at your disc profile, my question to you would be, how deep have you studied your own disc profile? How well do you even know yourself? Right? Because I have found if you study that disc profile enough and you know how you handle conflict, you can begin to temper how you handle conflict. Does that make sense? If you blow up, if you lash out, if you get frustrated, if you get angry, once you have an awareness of what let's just call it your kryptonite, then you can temper that. Because when you're on a team, that affects everything else. Now, somebody asked me the other day a concept that came up about teams on my podcast, and I said on my team that won a championship, I had the most selfish player I had ever coached on that team. Okay? And she was raised privileged, meaning her parents were wealthy. You got to think, I had real wealthy kids, and then I had real poor kids. Really, I only had one wealthy kid, and it was her. Everybody else was poor. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, and some of them very poor. One of them, you know, rode to school in a taxi cab in the morning. That's how poor she was. So I got this one kid over here whose parents are telling her she's the greatest, right? She's living a different kind of life than the other kids. You follow what I'm saying? Then I got her kind of mixed in with all these other kids that don't have any money, and they're stealing from each other in the locker room, and you know what I'm saying? Just typical things kids do from each other. And this kid was so selfish, but here's the decision I had to make. I don't think we win a championship without that kid. Does that make sense? I'm looking at my team and I'm going, if you pull her out of the equation, she's talented, but she's selfish. She don't even understand. Sometimes things come out of her mouth and I'm like, did she just say that to those? You understand what I'm saying? She didn't even understand. So the question becomes, you know, I didn't even know disc profile back then. I didn't even understand it. I didn't even know how to interact with kids like that. So what do? So I started teaching the 5 dysfunctions of teens. And one of the dysfunctions of teens is status and ego. Status and ego is where you begin to think you're irreplaceable. Does that make sense? You begin to think you're better than the team. So what happened, and it's typically always the people on the team that are the most talented. They got some skill set, they're getting some kind of results. So what I try to do is play to her conscience and say, Alex, you know, how do you think your teammates feel when you act like that? How do you think they respond? How do you think you're winning them over? Now, one of the coolest things we did, which the number one thing people were most interested in when I did the coaching thing, was we did a perception test. And the perception test was like 15 questions. Who do you think is the most selfish player? Who do you think is the best team player? Who do you think is the hardest worker? Who do you think is the laziest person? And the players rated each other. They took me out of the equation. And the reason that's important is because some players will say, well, she's Coach Burt's favorite. You understand what I'm saying? Like it took the favorites out because it's peers judging peers. We didn't say who, right? Like if Lakin took the test, her answers were anonymous. Like we didn't know it was Lakin. All we knew at the end was this is how your peers perceived you. Now, let me tell you the good and bad of that. The tough part was calling a person into my office and saying, hey, you've looked at the perception test. The players have rated you the worst out of 20 players. They say you have the worst attitude. Now, let me ask you a question. Is that how you want to be perceived? And they would go, no, sir. And I said, well, what are you willing to do to change that? And sure enough, we'd take that perception test 90 days later, they'd change their behavior, and they wouldn't be rated worst attitude. It was now they had a perception of how people saw them. Everybody with me? So the reason it's hard to build great teams is because, A, you have all these personalities, right? You have all these personalities working with each other. And this one thinks this way, 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 right? So what happens is you've got core values, and I want you to think about this differently. Core values has a lot to do with who you are at your core, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like I'm a lot the way I am because I was genetically scripted, physiologically, environmentally scripted by my mother, who's very tough. No nonsense, suck it up, get up and go to work. You see what I'm saying? We don't whine. Like that was just drilled into me from the time I was a little kid. Does that make sense?
Well, Coach, I think if parents would teach their kids self-awareness and understanding, like how you look, just like my body language, like I don't know what I'm doing on the outside, but internally, you know. So I think if parents could teach them, like you just roll your eyes, like you don't know sometimes. Right. So I think that would help. Yeah,
you don't know. You don't know. Okay, like literally kids don't like when I tell Ella Grace what she's doing, she sometimes is just like she don't even understand. Like no, I didn't roll my eyes, or no, I didn't do that. See what I'm saying? Or no, they don't understand. Okay, so what's happening here is that there are certain core values that people have based on all of these factors: genetics, environmental, psychological, how you were scripted. Okay, now when you get on a team. The team members have core values and the leader has core values. And here's what's happening. If they're not shared core values, you have conflict. See, all conflict, in my opinion, comes down to two people who just don't believe the same things. Does that make sense? That's where conflict comes from. You have your belief, and I have my belief. Okay? And because we don't believe the same things, okay? Now, this is an interesting thing. You know, Ramiz Hakim is now getting into philanthropic, political. He was on this debate last night with 4 other people, and he has a philosophy. You don't have to agree with everything I say. You just need to try to understand it. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have to agree with me. It doesn't make me right and you wrong because of the way I believe. But you need to try to understand where I'm coming from, and I need to try to understand where you're coming from. Got me for what I'm saying here? Now, when you have conflict on teams, it's because you don't share core values. Okay? Like, here's an example. I see work as a distribution channel for a person's talent. Meaning, I do not see work as just a job. I've had jobs. I pumped gas. I was terrible at it. Okay? I was terrible at pumping gas. I worked in a bank as a teller.
How are you terrible at that?
Because I hated it. And I worked for an owner who would drink a lot, and when he didn't want to come to work, he would just keep me there. So, like, if I was supposed to be done at 4 o'clock and he was supposed to come in, he would just say, I'm not coming in. You stay to 8. So I go in the morning thinking I was gonna get off at 4, and I get done at 4, and he'd be drunk by 4, and he'd say, man, I'm not coming. You got to stay there till 8. Like, it was very unpredictable. Like, I hated it. And then I worked at a bank because I thought I wanted to dress up. I went to my mom, I said, look, people work in banks, they dress up every day, they wear suits. My mom went to my grandfather went to the main banker and said, look, my grandson's a good kid, he wants to come work at the bank. I worked at the bank, and I hated it. I had a manager that yelled at me every single morning. I was the only male within me and 7 females. Okay, and none of them wanted to work at all. Like, they would just, as soon as they got there in the morning, they start complaining about how awful it was. When customers came in that they didn't like, they would hide like underneath the thing, so they couldn't see them. They would like go to the bathroom, like, and I'd just be stuck there. Right? I hated it. I was terrible at it. Okay, and we never talked about where we're going. We never talked about what's happening. We never talked about any things. It was just a job. I hated it. I believe work could be the distribution channel for your talents. But let's go back to the problem, though. Most people don't know what their talents are. They do not know themselves. So what do? They just go to jobs. That's why 67% of Americans say they're disengaged with their work. That's 7 out of 10. How many, we could all go out today on a field trip and go to 5 different businesses, and we could walk in those businesses and immediately walk in and know, hey, that person don't want to be here. That person don't want to be here. That person don't want to be here. They're miserable. Okay? So what happens is when you believe, let's just take this one core belief that I have, that work is a distribution channel for your talents, you see your work as your mission, not as a job. Which is why I think about it all the time. I think about my work when I'm not with y'all. I think about it when I'm out riding my bike. I think about it when I'm exercising. I think about it when you understand? Like, I'm thinking constantly, how to do this, how to do this, how to do this, how to do this. Why? Because I don't separate it out. Like, this is my home, this is my work, this is my this is my this. Everybody see that? Now, if you come in every day and you say, look, how fast can I get out of here? How fast can I be done today? And like I'm in prison here for 8 hours. If you think like that, you and I are going to have conflict at some point. Does that make sense? Because we have different beliefs about what we're doing here. You know, when we went to that hospital the other day, I was studying the personality profiles of the nurses. You know, they come in, and the one we had at night was a high C. You know, she's very compliant, and she wanted more information, and she's looking at things. And then, and she was real nice, real sweet. And the next morning, she's like, the woman's coming in the morning has been doing this 35 years. Like, she's good. That woman walked in the next morning. She's like, look, this is how this is going to play. This is how this is going to go. Like, it was a total shift in personalities. And she's like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Like, she just told everybody exactly how it's going to go, right? And I knew she was a high D immediately. Like, it ain't no playing around. Like, we're about to have this baby. You follow what I'm saying? And everybody better get in line of what's about to happen. And she was so good, right? Because she was like, boom, boom, boom. This is how it's going to be. She wouldn't let Natalie make the rules. She's like, look, you're going to do this. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this 35 years. This is what's going to happen. Okay? And it happened exactly the way she said it's going to happen. Now, here's the interesting part. Those other people, she had such a strong personality, those other nurses just did whatever she told them to. Does that make sense? She had a high credibility factor, a lot of experience, track record of success, and the other nurses just said, okay, whatever this woman tells us to do, we're doing it. There was no confusion, right, in that scenario. But, and then I watched how Dr. Chesney handled it when he came in, the doctor. Now, when you think about these problems, does everybody see where conflict can come in on teams? I believe in coming in early, staying late. Think about Jordan when he had conflict with his teammates. He believed in going all the way. They believed in halfway going. Okay? Now, do you guys see this every day on teams?
Yes.
Okay? Chelsea's got a team. We're recording this, so I'm not going to talk about it. She's got a team she's been working with for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, one of our clients. Where does most of her conflict come from?
The staff.
Okay, why specifically though? She said the staff for you guys. Why?
They disagree with the structure of the compensation.
Okay, they disagree with the structure. Okay, now do they disagree with the structure, or do they have true philosophical differences?
Differences.
Okay, now here's the deal. You hear me talk about acute issues and chronic issues. Acute issues are the problems that show up on the surface. Chronic issues are bigger issues. Like you and I really don't believe the same things. Does that make sense? And we can kind of hide it and band-aid it and put something over it for a little while, but it always comes out. When does it typically come out? If you study the disc, you know this.
Stress.
Under pressure. Under pressure is when it comes out. Everybody follow me? Now, this is very important because this is why the EOS is critical to this equation. Because it forces you to say, this is what we believe. This is why we believe this. This is what we do. This is how we do it different. Okay? And so when you're just understanding that part of building a team, I'm really to the point where you really need to know yourself. And you need to quit being a stranger to your own self. So at Flip the Switch, the first session, I almost put breakdown. Like there's breakdown, then there's breakthrough, then there's activators of prey drive. You follow what I'm saying? Then I'm like taking them on this journey. But the first thing I'm going to do is say, you don't even know your own self. Like, what are your hopes and goals? What are your hopes and dreams? And I guarantee they're not going to be able to tell me. What did you pick up from your parents that's a bad habit? What type of scripting did you have? What's your thoughts about money? What's your thoughts about success? What's your thoughts about this? Everybody see what I'm saying? I'm going to force them. And here's what they're going to find. If there's 40 or 50 kids in there, and I'm calling them kids, 20 to 30, I guarantee you there ain't one of them in that's asked themselves these questions. I wasn't asking myself these questions.
I actually had this conversation with my parents this
Mm-hmm.
weekend. Like what traits that I pick up from my dad, what traits that I pick up from my mom.
Right? Do you see both positive and negative traits? See, my mother is very controlling. You understand what I'm saying? Hardcore, right? So that's just who she is. Okay? And so she's that nurse that walks in and says, this is how it's going to go down. Okay? Like there ain't no discussion here. I've been doing this 30 years. Sit down and shut up.
Yes.
That's my mom. You follow what I'm saying? Now, here's the deal. That don't always work well with Natalie. Natalie's a high C, S, very methodical. She gets things when she wants to get to them. She works it on her schedule. So my mom's like, I text Natalie and she texts me back. Like it took her half hour to text me back. I'm like, Mom, she's got other things going on, right? But my mom is like, no, when I call you, answer the phone. That's how my mom thinks. That's who she is, right? And that's
This drives you crazy if your mother-in-law.
yeah, I know. That's helped her. That's helped her. You see what I'm saying? Like that's just who they are. Now, when you understand the disc, this is why I'm really becoming a fan of the disc. Because now, instead of arguing, I can step back and go, that's who they are. Like it's okay. This is who they are as a person. For whatever reason, this is how God made them. You can spend all your time trying to change them. You can argue with them. Or you can just step back and go, that's who they are as a person. Don't take it personal. That's one of the biggest things Robert Greene teaches is quit taking everything so personal. Most of the misdirected anger people have is not toward you, it's toward somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They're just taking it out on you. So when you learn not to take it personal, now you're really kind of maturing and growing up. I mean, I was thinking about how Jordan, I mean, if you really watch that thing, you kind of walk out of thinking Jordan was a bully. I mean, would you want to play with a guy that talked to you like that and made fun of you every day and every time? You understand what I'm saying? That was his way of doing it. Like, it'd be miserable playing with a guy like that. So you hate him, but you love him because he forces you to play better, right? But if he wouldn't have been one of the greatest players in the world, he would have never tolerated that, right? Because, I mean, he would have been very difficult, but that's who he was. That's what made him that drive, okay? Now, let's finish it up with this. So this is a big part. We have this assessment division of our company, which is really simple. People go to Monster Assessments, they take an assessment, right? And I'm having more and more conversations with people about this. I'm going, you guys really need to take the disc. Because if you're serious about trying to get more out of people, you need to understand yourself and you need to understand them. Okay? But most people haven't taken time. So if you haven't taken time to really know what you believe, then what you typically do is you just adopt other people's beliefs. Okay? You adopt other people's beliefs. One of the regrets of the dying is I live my life for other people. I've never lived it for myself. Basically, you just adopt what other people tell you to do your whole life. You never have your own dreams. You never have your own hopes. Now, so we're going to be talking about this month in Monster Producer. Like when you have conflict on teams, it's because of lack of core values. Core values meaning what I believe at my core. What do I believe at my core? Okay, and you have to really get clear on this. Okay, now you also have to have some tolerance for what other people believe at their core. Does that make sense? And sometimes you don't need to major in the minors. Okay, I work a lot on Sundays. I don't expect you to work all day on Sunday. That's me. That's what I've done my whole life because I'm creative. I'm a creative person. So I think a lot. You see what I'm saying? I watch a lot of things and that stimulates my thought pattern. Okay, does that make sense? That's just who I am. Okay, that don't mean you have to be that way. Now, if you ask me what my traits are, and you say, Coach, what helps you get to this level you're at? I would tell you I spend a lot of time. I'm gonna use the word meditating. But not meditating the way you think about it. I spend a lot of time thinking, studying, having conversations with people, being curious, learning. Okay, and that's just one of the things that's helped me get to where I am today. Right? Reading, listening to podcasts, doing it, right? Jay Cash always says, Coach Burt reads the books for me. Right? He said, I'm really paying him because he reads all the books and breaks it all down and he just gives it to me. Well, just thought of that, okay? Now, let's finish with this. A team, this is very important. As I was doing the notes for this course this month, this says dominant focus. I think Gabby wrote an article last week about what my love language is. My love language in business is production. It's revenue. Does that make sense? At the end of the day, you've got to be driving towards something. That could be the number of people you help. But to me, I'm a top line revenue person. Okay, which means I'm looking at, we have to hit this number. We got to get to this number. Because if you don't have any number, what does it matter? It don't matter. You don't care. You got to go for something. So to me, the dominant focus is critical. If you come to me and you say, I've got a time management problem, I'm going to say to you, you don't have a time management problem. You have a confusion of time. You have a target. That's called a dominant focus. That dominant focus decides whether every activity is a high value or a low value. Now I was thinking about this because Mel's doing a schedule for these podcasts. I enjoy being on podcasts. But at some point, there's a discussion probably between Chelsea and I about return on energy. And that same hour that I'm spending on that podcast, is that the best use of my time? Does it convert to money? Does that make sense? Because I've done podcasts that are just getting started where they're doing them in their closet. You follow what I'm saying? Like, I know they ain't got anybody listening to them because they're literally just trying to figure out how to turn a microphone on. I don't mind doing those. And I know that we generate, right? But we need to step back and say, okay, what is the highest value of Coach Burt's time to help us hit that number? What do y'all think it is, by the way? What's the highest value of my time to help us hit our revenue numbers? What would you say that is? You're looking at our selling system.
Stages.
That's right. The highest value of my time is putting me in front of as many people as you can at one time. That would be one high value of my time, which is why stages is so critical. I can get in front of 500 people at one time. Does that make sense? That's like prospecting to 500 people. Instead of like the other day, I was at the hospital, and when you're there, you just got a lot of time, right? You got a lot of time because the baby's just sleeping, and you're just sitting there in the hospital room, and they have not updated those hospital rooms in a long time. So I was going through active campaign. I was going right through active. I pulled an active campaign up, and I was just calling people, and texting people, and emailing people, right? And I was asking myself, if you put me in front of 500 people at one time, what's going to happen is we're going to separate out the people who are not interested quickly. The 16% are going to buy something, right? Then we're going to know these are our prospects to call. Then there's going to be 84% of people that are not. And in literally an hour, we can separate out. Okay, you can separate out who the 100 is that's interested and who's the 400 that's not interested. Okay, what would be the second highest use of my time? If I can't get on stage, what would it be?
Coaching corporate.
Say again?
Coaching corporate.
Coaching corporate people that pay us more money. I'm going to use a term there, Blue Marlin. The second high use of my time, and Mel, this is where you come in, is we have these assets that we're not using right now.
I was about to say, we need to spend time on things
That's right.
that don't require you to coach more.
That's right. So these assets, we have assets that we're not using enough, okay? Now, I'm going to put these in two categories. One asset is like me spending time with high net worth people, which is why this 505 room, the wine room, is important. See, if you put me at dinner, think about what we did in Memphis that night in front of those gravity people. You put me in a room at the 505 where we spend $500 on dinner or whatever, and you put me in there with 12 true movers and shakers, Chuck McDowell's and these big time people, and you just let us have a discussion. That is a high value of time. Because one of those could go, we want this guy to be our coach. We're willing to pay $100,000 to do it. That's a high value of time, okay? Selling things that are easy is a high value of time. I mean, Monster Producer is now set up that we could have 1,000 people in Monster Producer, 10,000 people in it. And I'm not teaching anymore. See, every monster you add to the equation does not add more work to me. Yeah. I'm still doing the same prep. I'm still teaching the same number of times. Right? I like it's easier today in Monster than it's ever been. Because I can teach it twice, do my Monday calls, create the content, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So that is a high value of time. So let me ask you a question. We'll close it on this. This is for everybody. This is for Mel. There's things you could do all day long, Mel, that are low value of your time. You could get involved in things all day long that are low value of your time. Now, for Eric and Lakin, the first thing you need to tackle that's the highest value of your time is your red zone conversions. Mm-hmm. Who are the biggest Blue Marlins that have the biggest potential that is moving me toward this number? Yeah. Versus just, right? Okay. So a lot of teams don't win in business world because they don't have clarity about where they're going. Okay, and where we're trying to go is really two things. A qualitative, we're trying to be a national coaching brand, no different than Stephen Covey, Maxwell, and we're trying to hit certain revenue numbers to do that. While at the same time, controlling our cost, meaning looking at how we can make the most money, be the most profitable out of what we're doing. Okay, so we're driving revenue and we're controlling cost. Everybody see that? That's two pieces of the equation. Okay. Now, does anybody have any questions on this? This is what we're covering. So, what are we selling right now? We got a lot of products. We got Monster Growth Bootcamp coming up.
Turn that around on the other side and you'll see it all.
Okay. All right, so we got the Monster Growth Bootcamp that's coming up. Now, last thing. I was watching this thing on Instagram. Instagram became $1 billion. They sold Instagram in 3 years for $1 billion to Zuckerberg. $1 billion. Okay. Now, here's what they say. It did not start off as Instagram. It started off as an app called Bourbon. Bourbon was they would go to restaurants and check in at a restaurant and take a picture of where they were at the restaurant. And it was called Bourbon. And they only had 100 users. They couldn't get more than 100 users. Now, here's the key point. They call it pivoting. Pivoting is instead of going, why can't we get more than 100 users? Why can't we go do this? They went to the 100 people that were using the app and they said, what do you like about using our app? And they said, well, we really don't care about the check-in. What we really think is cool is just taking a picture of where we're at and pushing it out to our friends. Okay? And then Bourbon became Instagram, where you show people what you were doing in the world. Does that make sense? 3 years later, they sold it to Zuckerberg for $1 billion. Now, this is where fluidity of thought comes in. It's called negative capability. It's the ability to see two things at one time. Okay? They were going down this route only to figure out this is not the route they need to be going. This is the opportunity over here. And here's what they kept saying in that interview. We didn't create something and try to shove it down people's throats. We tried to solve a problem. And once we figured out what the problem was there was no app at that time where you could share it to all your friends where you were at in pictures. That was the problem. And they said, once we figured out the problem, then we created the solution to solve the problem. That's not how a lot of people think. It's not how I think. I think I create a product and then I try to shove it down people's throats to take it. Right? Versus saying, what problems do you have? Let me create a solution to that problem. Each of these boot camps we're doing solves a problem for people. The Monster Growth Boot Camp gives you a system when you don't have a system. That makes sense? How many business owners do you coach every day have no idea how they're going to get customers today? That's what it solves. Okay? The $1 Million Coaching Summit teaches people how to monetize a message. Look how simple this is. That's what it teaches you how to do. It solves a problem. What's that flip the switch helps at the end of the day, what does it do? It helps flip the switch in a person. Does that make sense? People that have potential, but they don't have no idea how to reach it. That's the problem it solves. Okay? And I really see that boot camp. If my kids were old enough, I'd send them to it. I see parents paying for the kids to go through there. Like, this would be really good. Go spend 3 days with this dude. Go be mentored under this guy. Like, be professionally mentored by somebody. So my point is, when you solve a problem, money changes hands. So look at all the things we have coming up. Monster Producer, which is on Teams this month. You understand that. We got a video I put out last night on Facebook, so you understand what you're selling. It's about how to get your team. Now, what if you don't have a team? That's the first thing some low-level person is going to say. I ain't got a team. Yeah, you do. You got vendors. You got strategic partners. You got independent contractors. You do have a team of people, whether you know it. You ain't doing this by yourself. If you're the real estate agent, you got a title company, right? You got an insurance person you work with. Like, you got to quit thinking of this as I got to have a big team of people. Okay? We got the Monster Growth Boot Camp. Okay? We got the $1 Million Coaching Summit. We got Flip the Switch. These are the events that are coming up. Monster Publishing. Okay?
So last week we were talking about the blue part for 8%. What are your thoughts on Monster Producer being $2.99 for 6 months or $1.99 for 12 months? Because the reason I ask is because with what we're doing with the ads, it is highly recommended that we don't change the price from $2.99 for 7 months for the rest of the year, so we can see what works and what doesn't work. Okay. But when you're speaking, that's different than someone going to our website and seeing. So I was trying to keep pricing close, but incentivize people to take action on 12 months.
I don't think you can go on with either one of these.
Okay.
I think I can sell a bunch of those.
But we also talked about like a digital, like the new course with the book package where
All right, so just remember.
It was like a $97 offer, something more affordable. I just don't remember the exact people that are there.
That's what I'm teaching at 8%.
Oh, okay.
Person of interest. That's what they want me to
So
teach.
we could do a digital
version
of that.
Yes.
Okay. What about 0 to diamond though? You know that they're usually a lower level. A bunch of the
here's my initial thought on selling to that demographic. It is let's not sell an ongoing thing, let's sell a one-time thing.
So I was thinking the $97
Yes.
again.
Yes.
But the topic for that's follow-up, so don't you think Lisa's song would be a good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'd like to sell that group one time collection. Move on. Let me get on my horse and ride out of town.
We will
Okay?
have that on site that goes with the digital course.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have any additional expenses.
That's right. The best thing about that part is going to be in Naples. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Atlanta's not looking too high.
Yeah. All right. So everybody good on what we got talking about? It ain't easy being. Listen, it ain't easy being on the team, guys.
Pop quiz. Where is the registration link for Monster Producer class?
Good question. Because I actually registered for it. I registered for class to go through the process to see what it's like.
Email and you were emailed where it was going to be housed. Where do we house any event information? The 2020 event information doc. It's 2020 events.
Okay.
Lincoln's working on it,
Good.
but that registration link is there. Anytime you have questions about an event, you can go to the website or you can go to that doc.
All right. Now,
Everybody got it.
great question. Now, when you say if you got an event, you go to the website. But remember, we got a link. We're trying to register people. We really want to know how many people are coming.
Yes.
Okay, that's very critical. So you should go through the process and register yourself to see what it looks like.
What are you registering for using that link?
The live course,
To show up.
to be there live.
Murfreesboro or
Did I see that? And
they
it
don't
sends you.
register if they're already registered. Everybody's registered through Zoom.
Now,
They can't come.
if you run into a problem, a person says, I'm having problems registered for whatever, okay? Which we did last week. We have an access code that's real simple. You need to save it for the people who struggle. So when somebody calls you and says, I don't know how to get on the Zoom, let me give you this access ID code. Just get on Zoom and put that in.
Yeah.
That way, save
The
it.
steps were in the newsletter.
Yep.
Now, that everybody has been emailed.
The
to.
steps in the newsletter, the challenge is only 12% of people opening their email.
Right, so I would have like a copy and paste of that ready to go closer to the 4 o'clock call where it's, boom, you just paste it to whoever, so it's just easy.
Okay? Friction. No friction. Reduce friction. Okay? All right. Okay, guys. Let's have a great day. Thank you.
I'm here at the Relentless Monster Producer event. It's an intimate event that is like none other I've ever attended. The small group, the stuff we were able to talk about, the interaction between the speakers and the hosts and the guests, and among the guests among each other is second to none. This is something really, really special. It gives you a chance to really, really dig deep into the issues that are holding you back and things that aren't letting you be the person that you really want to be. You know, I always like to think of myself as, you know, I'm the family member nobody wants in their family, but I'm the family member you need in your family. Well, everybody has to have that one individual in there that kind of gives it to you straight. This is how it is. And we miss that. We really do. We miss the accountability. We miss having someone that tells it like it is.
Well, the first thing I would tell you about working with Tim Grover is he's a world-class person. This is very important. His whole intention on this retreat has been to make sure that people that come to this retreat get their expectations exceeded.
Write 3 things now down that are distracting you from you achieving your goals or whatever you want in life, whatever it may be. If there's one thing that you end up taking out of this event that hits you, you got more than your money's worth. Because that's where change starts. It's something you can take and you can use and make it your own. At this type of event, at the Relentless Monster Retreat event, everybody in here got something they could take that can possibly be life-altering to them.